Welcome back to episode 3 of SC Academies for season 2025. Today we will be reviewing round 1 as well as a preview of the upcoming round 2 games this weekend. Team List Tuesdays just dropped and we'll be going through the ins and outs for each team and discussing our trade plans heading into this week's matches. Let's get into it with a round 1 wrap-up. Round 1, I ended up coming away with a pretty decent score of 1294. I did captain Turbo for his 113. I did play Jesse Arthurs for his 94. However, I didn't play Robert Toya for his 90 or Shibasaki for his 83. I did get bailed out a little bit with Dylan Brown and Isaiah Iongi combining for about 80 points in the last 10 minutes after they were absolutely manhandled against the Storm. Concerning signs there. I do think Parramatta should bounce back. Obviously, the Storm are, at this point in the competition, the best team in the comp. They only had one change in their lineup from the team that played in the grand final. So I did expect a big score. I did tip them 13 plus. It was way more than that in the end. It was a first half masterclass by Storm in Melbourne. They were never going to lose round 1. So a little bit concerning with Brown and Iongi. They did end up putting out good scores. Obviously, Dylan Brown has now announced that he'll be signing for the Knights for the next 10 years. Be interested to see what people make of that. So we'll see if he continues to put in for the Eels now that the deal's done. I think he will. Most players want to go out with something to prove, and I don't think Volkman had too much of an effect on his output. Volkman is one of those halves that does like to steer the team around the park and allowed Dylan Brown to play a bit more of the second receiver role, which was good. So yeah, I was disappointed into the last 10 minutes, but he did end up turning out a good score, so that's what we want to see. Ranked in the top 9% after round 1. I don't know if anybody looked at the team that actually took out round 1 and is now ranked number 1, but things we do need to note. Our round 1 score, although I'm stoked that I'm in the top 9%, it's all about balancing, early scoring with longevity. If you looked at the round 1 team that won round 1, that team has no longevity whatsoever. They cashed in on a couple of players who had great weeks, for example, your Toyas, your Shibasakis, and played them. But I don't see any longevity there. So, at this time of year, ranks to be taken with a grain of salt, but I'm definitely happy with my start. And top 9% in round 1 with what I think is a team set up for good cash and good longevity, I'm pretty happy with. So let's get right into the round 1 results. First up, we had Roosters versus Broncos. Roosters 14, Broncos 50. Top scorer is Adam Reynolds, 105. Payne Haas in 30 or 40 minutes. Just front-loaded the house down with 104. Reece Walsh cashed in on the back of that with a 95. Some notable Supercoach relevant scores. Robert Toya looked great in an absolutely manhandled Roosters side with a 90. Jesse Arthur's 94. As I did mention, I did play him. Shibasaki 83. Jack Jajeski, 66, was with a try. That left side for the Broncos, that looked absolutely dangerous. He did cash in with a try there. Sandon Smith got bailed out with a 50, as did Corey Pakes with a 56. Some low lights, Angus Crichton with a 55. On paper, a 55 in a heavily beaten team's not so bad, but with Angus Crichton's price and what we know he's capable of, 55 was a bit disappointing, but even more so, James Tedesco, with being the most expensive player in the game, comes away with a 43. Then Brendan Pereira, who played 1 minute and then got sin-binned, ended up with a huge minus 11, which was one of the lowest Supercoach scores of all time. So, if you have Brendan Pereira anywhere near your team, he's probably one of the very few people, as well as an out for Parramatta that we'll talk about a bit later, that I can justify trading out this early. As we know, players' price rises don't start until they've played at least 3 games in the NRL. So for most of the players we'll be talking about today, we are going to be holding. A Piakura or a Parramatta player that we'll get to in a moment are definitely outs. Going into a couple of notes here, so the Roosters were constantly exposed late in the tackle count. It was like touch football out there. The amount of times they got exposed on the 4th and 5th tackle deep in the Broncos' own end was absolutely outstanding. Ben Hunt looked ridiculously good on the left-hand side, feeding that left edge. So something to look out for there. I didn't expect Hunt to have a blinder like he did, but yeah, so Smith and Pakes, as I mentioned, got bailed out by tries. The Broncos' left edge looks lethal, we touched on. Cobbo, however, on the right-hand side, scored 85 with 3 tries. For a Selwyn Cobbo owner, although I'd take the 85, I'm pretty concerned that he only ended up scoring 85, considering he did have those 3 tries. So with the Broncos continuously wanting to go left, it's pretty big warning signs there if you're a Selwyn Cobbo owner. Moving on to Tigers versus Knight. Tigers 8, Knights 10. Top scorers Greg Marziu with an 83. Fletcher Sharp also with an 83. And then Kalen Pongo 1 short with an 82. A couple of notable scores. Terrell May looked amazing, 78. Dylan Lucas, 75. Jarrell Skelton looked good too, 62. Phoenix Crossland, who we touched on in episode 1 as a maybe buy for the hooker spot, came away with a 51, which is pretty respectable for his price. Some lowlights, Fainu only with 9, Safar 36. He did go off with a HIA though, but a couple of warning signs there. And Dane Gagai, super consistent guy, obviously in a low scoring game that didn't have a whole lot of attack headed his way, but came away with a 48, pretty much all in base. It was a sloppy, low-scoring game. The Knights looked clunky, but I expect that to come good. But yeah, round 1, it wasn't clicking for them. And as I mentioned, Alex Seyfarth went off with a HIA. Moving on, Rabbitohs versus Dolphins. Rabbitohs getting their first win of the year. Rabbitohs 16, Dolphins 14. Top scorers Jermaine Asako 96, Max Plath 83. Hammer with an 80, as well as a couple of relevant scores. Tom Gilbert looked good with a 64. Jamie Humphries with a 55. Lachlan Hubner with a 45. He was pretty much locked into everybody's teams. A couple of lowlights. Cody Walker with a 28. And Pete Mamazelis with a 37. Now, I do have him as a lowlight, even though that he scored 37. And unlike somebody like Smith or Pakes, he didn't have a try or anything in there. But something I will highlight, he did play extended minutes. Tyrone Munro went down at halftime with another collarbone issue. It's his 3rd one now, which meant that Bud Sullivan actually came on in the centres when he was in that utility position at 14, and could have possibly been a plan to replace Mamazelis, but obviously went out in the centres, and then I think Havili played about 10 minutes at hooker, who's been a hooker for South in the past as well. So with that combination of both Sullivan and Havili on the bench, which is going to be the same combination on the bench in round 2 as well, I do really worry about the minutes for Mamazelis and the output in those minutes. 37 is just frankly not what we want to see out of him. And considering that we have Sandon Smith there, if the Roosters can score some tries, he's going to kick some goals. I don't see it happening this weekend. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But it's warning signs if you're a Mamazelis owner. Moving on to Dragons and Bulldogs. I didn't see a whole lot of this game. I was at the Race of Champions on Saturday. So the 2 Saturday games, I can't elaborate on too much, but from what I did see, I have some notes here that I will go through. But Dragons 20, Bulldogs 28. Bulldogs got away to a good start and led the majority of the match and came away with the win. Top scores, Tuipulotu 128. Gutherson 113 and Tupanua with 103. Couple of relevant scores. Connor Tracy with a 90. The reason I highlight Connor Tracy is the only fullback in the league who is a dual at centre. So one to watch out for there. If we can run 3-4 fullbacks in our teams, then happy days. And Connor Tracy just might be our ticket to do so. Emre Gula also pretty low price. Front row forward, came away with a 53. Could have had some extended minutes though. I wouldn't jump on Emre Gula in round 2. Also, the Dragons have the bye in round 3, so you can watch him in round 2 and then maybe bringing him round 4. So something to look out for there. A couple of lowlights. Damien Cook with a 42. Just based on the price that he's at, and we highlighted him in our round one preview as somebody to steer absolutely clear of. And Jacob Preston with 49. Look, it's a little bit disappointing for Jacob Preston owners. I do think he's in for a big season, and not much ball really headed his way from what I saw. But yeah, a little bit disappointing for the price at a 49. Jacob Little looked absolutely explosive when he came off the bench when Cook went there. Look, if I'm any coach in the NRL, Jacob Little, how that bloke is not in a starting hooker role in the NRL is absolutely beyond me. If I'm Wayne Bennett, I'd definitely be looking there, because I just don't think Mamazelis is the future, leader of our club. And I can't see him, being the future 9 for a very long time. Somebody like Jacob Little could slot right in. So he looked absolutely incredible from what I saw. The Dragons' left edge could prove to be a gold mine, as we highlighted in our round one preview. Interesting to see if Finu is going to come back into the team eventually. He'd probably be the one I target. But yeah, Tuipulotu scoring the tries that he did can't be moved at the moment. They do have a buy in round 3, as I mentioned, so it lets us wait a further week until we need to jump on before any price rises. And the reason I mentioned Emery Gula might have had a couple of extended minutes is that Ryan Couchman was gone with an ACL and he is gone for the year. He went down quite early, so hence the extended minutes there for Gula. Moving on, Seagulls versus Cowboys. Again, as I mentioned, I was at the Race of Champions on Saturday, so didn't see a lot of this one. I was trying to tune in when I could, but what an absolute demolition job. Seagulls 42, Cowboys 12. Top scorers, Daly Cherry Evans 130. We highlighted him as a potential pod. I mean, I can't really claim it because I didn't jump on, but 130 in round 1. We highlighted Manly's great draw, 5 out of 7 at 4 Pines Park, and he was one to cash in. Tom Trbojevic, 113. I did captain him, so I will claim the credit there. Not really. Pretty much everybody with a brain captained Tom Trbojevic. Jason Saab, 107. Couple of notable scores. This one I absolutely can't claim because I was fading this guy and death riding him. Hamale Alaquatu, 100. Of course it had to be 100 on the dot after, 2 weeks ago me sitting here and saying he's only had 3 tons in his entire career. 2 of them have been against the Tigers. I mean, the Cowboys, they've got to be the Tigers this year, surely. Like, for me, they're the wooden spooners. And I said this before this game, and it absolutely cemented my thoughts on the Cowboys this year. They just have no defensive upside. They look so small. Their forward pack looks tiny. They've just got no go forward, no defense. It's panic stations there at the Cowboys for me. But yeah, of course, Olaquatu had to cash in with 100 on the dot after me highlighting that he'd only had 3 tons in his career. He makes it a 4th in round 1. I'm still kind of on the fence. I feel like everything went to that edge for the Seagulls. So he did cross for a try as well. I mean, he is going to score tries. He is one of those attacking upside second rowers, but I am still fading him. If he comes out and scores a belter again next week, if he's in for a massive price rise, he's like 30 or 40% owned or something like that. So I might have to bring him in and cash in on that price rise, but we'll see how we go. For now, I'm not making any panic decisions, but Ruben Garrick with an 86 and Scott Drinkwater 72. It was a real late try in a side that was absolutely demolished. A couple of low lights though. Duffy with a 27. I am praising the Lord as a Cleary Hines owner, fading Duffy at bottom dollar. Somebody who, well, we say a goal-kicking halfback, but we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I'm very happy as somebody that faded Duffy, that he went out and scored a 27 and got demoralised by the Seagulls. And then Jackson Purdue, who I do have in my team. I didn't play him, thank God, but he did score at 28, which is, warning signs again. As I highlighted, Cowboys defensively vulnerable. We did suspect that in pre-season. Duffy and Purdue, Job security risks, you got blokes like Jake Clifford floating around who, could cement their claim to take that 7 spot back off Duffy. At the moment, they've been named, but I'd be really nervous as a Duffy owner especially. I feel like at centre wing, there's a few more guys that you can shift to and get out of a Jackson Purdue. But with Duffy at such a low price and barely making his break even, I feel like it's going to be really tough for anybody to get away from Duffy without spending up and having to sacrifice the rest of their team. So, yeah, really, really big warning signs there for Duffy owners. Manly absolutely cementing their case as premiership contenders. Moving on, talking about premiership contenders, Storm versus Eels. Holy moly, that first half was some of the most damaging football that I've seen for a very, very long time. And also like a comical amount of errors for the Eels as well. Storm 56, Eels 18. Eels won the second half in this game somehow. But top scorers, he's that guy, isn't he? Ryan Pappenhausen, 131. I mean, surely he's not going to score those kind of points every week. Interestingly enough, though, if he does eventually get the goal kicking back off Nick Meaney, he's almost a must-have if he's goal kicking. He is going to obviously get some price rises because he is pretty low value at the moment for a Ryan Pappenhausen and what he can produce. But Ryan had a nice 131. Cam Munster with a 99, but he scored virtually nothing in the second half. I was quite high on Cam Munster and did highlight him as one of the Storm players, along with Pappenhausen actually, that I thought could rise in value for the Storm this year. He did have a 99, but it was all front half loaded. So, yeah, it looks great on paper, but a little bit concerning with that second half performance. Nick Meaney cashed in off the back of all those goals that he kicked, and also I think he had a try in there. I might be wrong. I should have checked that before we hit record, but ended up with a 98, which was a nice score for him. A couple of notable Supercoach relevant scores. Eli Katoa with an 85, cashed in on that edge. Dylan Brown and Isaiah Yongi. Oh my God, I was sitting there with 10 minutes to go. My score was about a 1200. I was actually driving at the time, and then about 10 minutes later, I thought, I'll quickly check, what I ended up on, and 1290. How has this happened? And saw that Dylan Brown and Iongi cashed in for some junk time points and got themselves to a 73 and a 69, which I was absolutely stoked with, especially as an Iongi owner and somebody that went for 2 gun fullbacks plus Iongi. I feel like if you're part of the Iongi camp, you're ahead of those running 3 gun fullbacks. Obviously, not in terms of points if you went with, say, for example, Ponga, Travojevic and Walsh. But most of those teams probably also had Duffy in their squad as well. So that's something to consider. For the price point, we're in front. So a couple of lowlights. Brandon Hands with an 8. Absolutely awful. And Riley Smith didn't score much when he came on either. Kelma Tulangi. Holy Moses. I am so glad that I faded on this guy when I did. Full disclosure, this bloke was in my team heading into round 1. And as we spoke about in my first episode, we ended up fading on him after watching him in the trials. He defensively looked so poor. Ended up coming away with a 27. I'll give a little insight into Team List Tuesday before we get into it. He has been axed. If you are a Kelma Tulangi owner, get him gone. Zach Lomax, 47. Look, it's a low light because it's Zach Lomax and the price he's at, but in a squad that was absolutely hammered with no attacking upside and a stupid amount of missed tackles, you probably take 40-70 for a Zach Lomax owner. It's not, it's not doomsday, but it's something to watch. As I mentioned, it was a first half demolition, and Brown Iongi bailed out by late attack, and Tulangi was worst on ground, hence why Jason Riles has swung the axe early and got him gone. Knights versus... round 2. Let's get into it. Knights versus Dolphins is our first match on Thursday night. A couple of changes to the Knights. Adam Elliott comes into the bench. Brodie Jones goes to 18th man. A couple of Dolphins changes. Finafuiaki, he had that HIA against South and got ruled out with a Cat 2, so he's out. Yeah, that one. You know the words. Anyway, he has a fractured eye socket, so he's out. And Sean O'Sullivan, as expected, comes out. As we know, Nikorima stayed home with his family during the cyclone. So along with Nikorima comes back in, as well as Keeley and Nichols. Now, this is one thing I want to touch on. If you happen to listen to our predictions last week, we had 6 games. We took, let me think, what was the first game? We had Broncos versus Roosters. We took Broncos 13+. The second game, Knights versus Tigers. We took Knights 1-12. The third game, South versus Dragons. We took South 1-12. Then we moved on to Bulldogs and Dragons. We took Bulldogs 1-12. We then went to Manly versus the Cowboys, where we took Manly 13+. And then the last game was the Storm versus the Eels, and we took Storm 13+. So we went 6 from 6, not just on the tips, but on the margins as well. And you can guess how much money I had on that on Sportsbet. $0.00. I was absolutely shattered. I went 6 from 6, didn't back myself, didn't have a cent on it. I roughly worked out, based on head thoughts and what I thought each result would pay, I roughly guessed that would have been around about a $50 multi. And I'm absolutely spewing that I did not have a single cent on it. Anyway, my prediction for this week for Knights versus Dolphins is Knights 1-12. I'm a bit nervous about this one. I think their attack should look a bit better than what it did last week against the Tigers. They are at home, and they've got the slight nod there, but I think it's going to be a pretty tight encounter, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Warriors versus Seagulls. I don't know how, but the Warriors have named the same pathetic 17 as last week. Concerning signs. Where's Jacob Laban? But anyway, they've somehow named the same 17 that got embarrassed in Vegas and looked absolutely awful. So I don't see anything else changing. The Seagulls, Takiaho comes out, Aloi is in. Seriously, it's the easiest prediction here. You've got to think Manly get up 13+ again. I know the Warriors are at home, but with the same 17 being named and Manly looking as good as they did, I cannot see anything changing. So we have gone again for Manly 13+. Kind of same story, Panthers versus Roosters. Panthers changes, Brian To'o comes in, so they just get even better. Paul Alamotti goes to centre, Garner comes to the bench, and Patea is out. Going on to the Roosters, Fogarty comes in at the starting 13, Wong goes to 12, Makatoa's in on the bench, Radley is out with that HIA. Prediction here, Panthers 13+, with the Roosters looking as awful as they did last week, and the Panthers being the Panthers and getting even better with Brian To'o coming back. Yeah, again, pretty easy prediction here. Dragons versus Rabbitohs. Now, you'll notice here, and we've mentioned in the past that I am a Rabbitohs fan, but look at that match prediction. See, you don't get bias here on SC Academy, you get what I think is going to happen. A couple of Dragons changes. Laurie comes in, Ryan Couchman out, and he's out for the season. Few changes for South. Fletcher Myers comes in, Bentley Hape comes in, Whiten out with that suspension, and Tyrone Munro out as well. Match prediction here, Dragons 1-12. I think they'll get the job done. They definitely showed us up, especially early in the Charity Shield. I know that we had the name that we will not mention, who's wearing 19, Lewis Dodd, in the squad, and looked so much better when Jamie Humphries came back on the park, and he'll be starting again at 7 this week for South. But yeah, I have a feeling that the Dragons will get the job done here, 1-12. Moving on. Oh my God, this could be 40+. Seriously, Cowboys versus Sharks. Again, like the Warriors, barely any changes. Kai O'Donnell comes in. Wow, great. Nanai comes out, and the Sharks are unchanged. It says it all, really. Sharks 13+. I don't need to go on for too much longer about this. I think if you're a non-Nico Hines owner especially if you're a non-Nico Hines owner who's a Duffy owner. You should be very, very, very worried about this game. I can't say that I'm in that camp. I'm a Cleary Hines owner, so I'm very happy about this one. But yeah, I would be very, very, very worried if you're in the other camp. Moving on, Raiders versus Broncos. Raiders changes. Papali comes in to start at prop. Smithies goes to lock. Albert Hopewade comes back in. Xavier Savage is out with the suspension, and Tarpanay is also out with his suspension. Broncos are unchanged. I have gone Broncos 13 plus here, but I will say that the Raiders did look quite good through the middle and in defense in Vegas. I'm kind of giving the Broncos a lot of credit for what they put up against the Roosters. I know we said the Roosters were going to be poor, and they were. But yeah, I'm staying 13 plus here with the Broncos. I was almost going to go 1-12, especially being at home for the Raiders. But yeah, I think the Broncos should win and should win well. Moving on, Eels versus Tigers. Yeah, as we mentioned already, big changes for the Eels. Tago is out, Tulangi is out, Geimer is out, Sean Lane comes in, Semirani comes in, and Kotoga comes in. A couple of changes that were expected. Coruscant and Buller come back in. I was not expecting Stafford Toa to come back in this early. I am really happy that he has, because I had him on my watch list in round one, and he didn't end up getting named, which means that we could shift from somebody like a Jackson Purdue onto Stafford Toa come round three. So I'm excited to see what he brings in, and because of the changes with Coruscant, Hope comes out, Fatape comes out, and obviously Mason comes out as well. I have gone Eels 1-12 here. Oh, this game could be anything. It really could be anything. You throw a dart at a dartboard and you might hit the right area once in a while, but this game could absolutely be anything. I have put Eels 1-12. I think they should bounce back. I feel like if you're an Eels fan, you should be encouraged by the fact that Jason Riles has had the balls to axe Kelmer this early in the season. There were a lot of people tipping him to play 80 minutes this year, and he's gone in round two. So I feel like if you're an Eels fan, you should be pretty happy with the changes, especially taking the worst player on the ground out of the squad completely. So I have a feeling they're going to bounce back here. Moving on to Bulldogs versus Titans. Bulldogs changes. Josh Curran comes into the squad. Hayes comes out. Dolphins. Oh, I've got Dolphins here. I obviously haven't changed it from my copy-paste. Titans changes, I should say. It's their first game of the year. Tino is at 13. So interesting to see what his minutes are like at lock. Brimson locks down 6 and Campbell at 7. Match prediction here. I've gone Bulldogs 1-12. Again, this game could kind of be anything. I do expect the Bulldogs to win. I do have a slight feeling it could be a bit of a margin, but I'll give the Titans a little bit of credit, or the not Titans, the Dolphins as I have here. But anyway, moving on to our round 2 team. We are making no changes. Well, we're making changes as to who we're playing, who we're sitting and starting. We are making 0 trades. I encourage, as I mentioned earlier, unless you have somebody like a Tulangi or a Piakura, I don't know why you've touched Piakura in the first place. You probably should just delete the app at this point. But if you somehow have him in your team, that's some of the players that I could encourage making a trade for. But as you can see, even I have a Metcalf here. Obviously had an absolute horror first game. But we won't be making any trades until next week. We do want to see that extra little bit of sample size there, and get a second look at every player that we've brought into our squad. You know, you've made these decisions in preseason for a reason. Stick to your guns. Don't make any trades now unless you need to rip apart your team. But at the moment, I feel like I'm in a good position, so we're making no trades this week. A couple of changes though. We're going to play Corey Pakes. I'm really kind of worried about having these 2 bottom dollar hookers that don't look that flash, but we're going to play Corey Pakes. We're going to sit Sandon Smith out because of that matchup. He really got saved late in that game last week, and I can't see that happening again. I can't see a whole lot of goal kicking going on, so we're going to sit him and play Pakes. Front row forward, same two as last week, Terrell May and Corey Horsburgh. You'll notice that Naf White, who I played last week at 2RF, I've shifted him up to be my front row 3, but he won't be playing in my team. He'll be a non-playing reserve, as well as Royce Hunt. I didn't really touch on Royce Hunt a lot in that Tigers game. He had actually a few more minutes than I expected, played 30-odd minutes, was in everything, but only came away with like 20-something points. A little bit concerning, but it's a front row 4. As I mentioned in my round 1 team reveal, I'm not really too worried. It's not like I'm going to be playing a front row 4 very often at all, especially this year with the flex. If it comes around to Origin time, then maybe, but even actually we should touch on that. Like even around Origin time, Terrell May probably cements his position to play Origin. Somebody like Royce Hunt could get extended minutes. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the front row 4. It's not really ever, for me, a scoring position. So although I'm not really generating cash there, I'm really not too worried at all. Hunt's always going to be in or around that team. He doesn't have job security issues. He's going to, probably score 20 or 30 a week and just be a plotter, but I don't need anything there unless we get some bottom dollar cheapie come around with some stupid negative break even in a few weeks' time. Then sure, I'll jump on. But for now, Royce Hunt staying where he is. Moving on, second row, Dylan Lucas did a great job in round 1, stays there. Finally, we get to see Tino. This is another reason why I'm stoked to score 12.90 in the first week, is the fact that I had Tino on the pine. I'm spending up a little bit there. He's touched over 500k. I think he's like 530k or something like that. So to have a 530k player on the pine and still score 12.90, I was pretty stoked with. Zach Hosking, can he just get an actual try assist this time and not have it ripped off? That would be real nice. Kobe Hetherington, at the moment I've got the reserve on him. I'm tossing up whether or not to take it off him, but it's like, who would I put it on? I do not want to put it on Metcalf. I'm not playing that game twice. But yeah, with the flex in there, I feel like one of these reserves can dud out and we'll still be okay. So Lockie Hubner I've kept in there as a reserve. I feel like his floor is probably pretty low, especially against the Dragons. I feel like he'll get in there, he'll make a bunch of runs and make a bunch of tackles as well. So I feel like it's a bit more of a secure pick there. Halfback, Nathan Cleary, Nico Hines. There is one reason and one reason only that I do not have the captaincy on Nathan Cleary, is that I will be on a plane at the time that this game is played, and on the plane at the time that the Manly game beforehand is played. So if Tom Trbojevic comes out and has a huge game and I have the VC on him, I will not be able to switch it. So basically whoever I choose at captain is locked in anyway. I might make a late change and might just go straight C on Cleary. Which means I'll pop the VC on Tommy anyway, but I wouldn't be able to change it because I'll be in the air during these two games. So yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate that I won't be able to cash in on the loop, but at the moment I've left the captaincy off Cleary. Hines playing reserve, obviously. 5/8, I've given Dylan Brown the nod again, and this time I've moved Metcalf to my non-playing reserves. I will watch that game and see what happens, but for now he's not touching my squad again. He's very much on my list to be a trade in round 3. Oh, as well as Vaimalga, who I didn't mention either, is also non-playing reserve and going to be one of those on my trade list come round 3 if he doesn't get more minutes. Centre wing, Ruben Garrick, Greg Marzu, Campbell Graham. I was actually pretty stoked with Campbell Graham only scoring 40-something. He stays low on a lot of people's radars, and if you watch that game, it was all base. So if he comes away with a couple of attacking stats, that easily turns into 60s, 70s. He's so underpriced. 40, I think it was 43, but it was all in base in a real volatile position at centre wing. I will take. Jesse Arthurs, we're going to play him again this week. And then we've got Jackson Purdue, non-playing reserve. Shibasaki, I probably, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I really probably should take the reserve off Hetherington and put it on Shibasaki just for the upside. It would probably kill me if he went out and scored huge again. But look, either way, he's in my team. It's cash gen. We're not too concerned. Same as Robert Toyer, who looked really good. But again, I'm not going to play him this week. We're going to see another week and see what happens. Round 3 might come around as a pick. Fullback, obviously Tom Trbojevic. As I mentioned, I've put the captaincy on him. We may make a late change. I won't be able to keep you updated. I'll be in a state. But yeah, we might flip-flop and put the captaincy on Cleary. But yeah, now that I'm looking at this, I feel like the Hetherington to Shibasaki move is probably more likely than the Cleary captaincy over Trbojevic. But it's just going to be one of those things that I think about over the next couple of days before that match. Isaiah Yongi, I'm going to play him again this week. I feel like Parramatta win. I feel he has a lot more attacking upside in this game rather than spending the entire game behind the goalposts like he did against the Storm. So he will be playing for me again. And then Kalen Ponga, I've got the VC on. So yeah, that wraps up round 2. Well, the start of round 2 anyway. It wraps up episode 3. As I keep mentioning, please, if you've got any comments, hot takes, whatever it may be, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Share it with all your mates who play Supercoach and have Bren Piakura in their team. Or just tell them to delete the app, let's be honest. Thanks again for joining me for episode 3 of SC Academy. As I mentioned, I will be in a state, so hopefully still be able to catch as many games as I possibly can this week. But next week might be a little bit short of info, so we'll see how we go. But we'll try and get in as many games as we can. We'll probably end up watching them back on KO. And let's be honest, it's going to be a KO mini. I'm not going to sit there and watch 2 80-minute games that I wasn't there for. Normally I would sit down in front of the TV and soak them in, but unfortunately I don't have that attention span. So we'll see what next week's information looks like. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Hope your team goes well. And yeah, if you're a Brendan Piakura owner, I hope you're not watching this video. And if you are a Brendan Piakura owner, I mean, look, if you want to hit the unsubscribe button now, you can. But we are an academy. We are a school. You did get an F for the first week. We still want to see you turn that into an A+. So if you are a Brendan Piakura owner, this is more of a reason to hit subscribe and stay tuned, because we can avoid those dumpster fires together. All right, guys, that's enough waffling on. Hope you have a great week. Take care.